Texas. The issue is.
I'm Greg Grugan in Houston.
I'm Rudy Koski in Austin.
And I'm Stephen Dial in Dallas. And this is Texas, the issue is.
On March 5th, Texas Democrats have a very practical decision to make. That is, which candidate has the best chance to unseat longtime Republican incumbent Ted Cruz. Dallas area Congressman Colin Allred is absolutely convinced his brand of bipartisan pragmatism makes him the guy who can galvanize progressives while attracting independents and even a few disaffected Republicans. You've been outspoken about the crisis on our border. I'd like you to react to the Supreme Court's decision involving razor wire deployment.
Yeah, well, I think it's the right decision. This is a federal province. The Constitution clearly puts this in the federal government's power, and now it's the federal government's responsibility to act. And, you know, I've been frustrated that we've not, I think, been more responsive to what has been an increasing crisis, and that really comprehensively we haven't acted since the Reagan era. It's time for us to come together and try and find common ground between Democrats and Republicans on how we can reform our immigration system to better secure our border, to better match the needs of our economy, and to help us move forward.
You've been outspoken about your ability to work across partisan boundaries. You voted with some of your Republican colleagues on a resolution. You want to talk about that?
Sure. Well, for me, this was an effort really to send a message that the status quo is unacceptable, that our inaction at the federal level, which I think both parties bear responsibility for, is actually the brunt of that is being borne by our border communities here in Texas. Your Democratic opponent, State Senator Gutierrez, has made the statement that your willingness to vote with the Republicans, I think his term is an indicator that you forgot which primary you're in. How do you respond to that? Yeah, listen, I think it's okay for Democrats to talk about border security as well. And I think we have to, especially if you are putting Texas first, which is what I've always tried to do. I see myself as a Texan first before party, and I'm proud of my bipartisan record. If you could sit down face-to-face with President Biden and try to get some clarity for him about the crisis that our state and our country is facing, what would you tell him? Yeah, but you have to at least get caught trying. Let's get going on this. Let's not cede the argument to just the loudest voices in the room who want to do and pursue extreme policies. That there are common sense steps that we can take right now, and that if the Congress won't act, then use your executive authority to act. A majority of Texans believe that the state's abortion law is too extreme. When you see those polls, what do you think? Yeah. Well, I certainly agree, and I think that when I talk to Texans, it is the extremism of the position that strikes folks, that if you're a victim of rape or incest, that there's nothing for you to do. And, of course, we're hearing about some of these stories of folks who've been able to get the care that they need by leaving the state. But we're not hearing some of these stories of folks who are forced into some of these horrible situations, who didn't have the option or the privilege of being able to leave the state. And at the federal level, we can reverse this by going back to the standard that we've had for the last 50 years and putting Roe v. Wade back as the law of the land. That's what I intend to do in the Senate. You are hoping to dislodge Senator Ted Cruz from his seat in the United States Senate. We have polling, recent polling, that show the race is a dead heat regardless of which Democrat emerges from the primary. I think it's more reflective of Ted Cruz and the fact that so many Texans, I think, are ready to move on from him. I'm in the beginning of the process of introducing myself to Texans because I'm a fourth-generation Texan. I was born and raised in Dallas by a single mother. It was a big deal for my family that I got a scholarship to play football at Baylor. I was made here in Texas, and I believe in our state, and I want to serve all 30 million Texans. My one-word response, centrist. Stephen, what's your word?
My word, November.
Okay, Rudy, lay it on us.
Greg, Stephen, I'm going to go with an audible and a hyphen. My word is zone blitz.
Okay, there you have it. The Fox Texas Trio will return on the other side of this break. Welcome back. Colin Allred portrays himself as a principled Democrat, pragmatic enough to engineer compromise in a contentious, deeply partisan, deeply polarized congressional atmosphere. Rudy, I want to get your take on Allred's high-profile vote with the Republicans on the border resolution. Is he just being a truth teller?
Greg, I think it was all about protecting his marketing as a moderate. And, you know, it's somewhat of a political calculated risk. That's why my word was zone blitz, drawing in on his stint in the NFL. Now, for those who don't know, a zone blitz is designed to confuse the offense. It's an attempt to get the linebacker, that Allred was, to sack or pressure the QB. Now, Allred is trying to do the same thing with Gutierrez with his strategy, win the race with moderates and independents, and if he wins the primary, use the same game plan against Cruz. It could work. Or like the number of sacks that he had in his short 4 years in the not-for-long league, he could end up with his big 0.
All right, Stephen. We've heard from Allred's principal opponent, Roland Gutierrez, last week, and he accused Allred of aligning himself with the likes of Matt Gaetz and Margaret Taylor Greene when it comes to border security. Now, do you think Texas Democrats can see through that kind of allegation?
First, I'm going to say we might need to investigate Rudy for sign stealing if he's calling defensive plays. Now, back on the topic, I mean, Gutierrez is sticking to his strategy, right? And that's what he has to do. He's trying to attract the more progressive wing of the party. And in primaries, you typically get more votes from those who are the most thirsty to turn out, which typically are the most left and the most right of your party. But when it comes to this topic, even Democrats are now being more vocal about the problem on the border. And while trying to attach Colin Allred to Matt Gaetz or Marjorie Taylor Greene, I just don't think Democrats are going to be deceived by that. And not saying Gutierrez is trying to deceive people, but I don't think that play is going to work.
Fair enough. Rudy, I ended the last segment by labeling Congressman Allred as centrist. Let's just assume the polls hold up and it's Allred versus Cruz in November. Will the congressman's moderation make him more attractive to Texas independents who tend to vote R, but may be just flat out tired of Ted?
You know, Greg, on paper, it seems like the right strategy, but I'm beginning to believe that this tired of Ted spin is more of a media thing than a real thing, and that it only gets a response out of Democrats when you hear it. From what I'm hearing, and from Allred's first TV campaign, if he wins the primary, the game plan will be essentially a reboot of 2018 and the 2020 strategy, and that is abortion and anybody but Trump. Trump's the bad guy. And those were the big issues in both of those years. And both made the Cruz-Beto Senate race, you know, pretty close, and they splashed that predicted red tsunami in the recent midterm in 2020. So maybe Allred will finally get that first big sack.
All right, Stephen, we've seen moderate, pragmatic Democrats run statewide before and get close but still lose. Mike Collier in the lieutenant governor's race comes to mind. Could this likable, very earnest former NFL linebacker achieve what others have not done in 28 years?
Hey, it's going to... Democrats have an uphill. They've had uphill, as you mentioned, for 2 decades. It's going to come down to turnout. And if the Allred, let's say he's the nominee, his ground game, because voters have shown that even though the top of the ticket may not spell good for the bottom of the ticket, let's say a Biden-Trump rematch, as what we're expecting, then Allred's going to have a killer ground game and convince some people on the ground in person. And then turnout is going to have to be really big. Is it possible? Sure, everything's possible, but it's very uphill.
All right, Rudy, let's not get ahead of ourselves. Allred is killing the competition when it comes to fundraising, and he's up on the air in major markets. What do you make of that?
You know, I think that it only shows what Stephen just mentioned. You know, he has the momentum. He has a good message, and it's going to be about moderates and independents, but it's like Stephen said, it's going to be about the turnout. And if Trump is going to be the Republican nominee, I think that is going to be the key. And if that's the case, look for an upset.
All right, Stephen, 20 seconds. Allred has all the money right now.
He has the money. The real question is, will Allred be able to win outright? The lower candidates would need to get more than 1% of the vote to help Gutierrez force a runoff.
All right, let's leave it there. You can see the interview and any of our past